We continue now at the top of Daf 20b Meseches Makkos. This is Makkos Daf 20b. On the previous summit, the Gemara asked, what are we talking about when we say that if a person creates 4 or 5 bald spots on his head because of grief over a mace, that he's chayiv on every single one? Ela b'choda hasra. Rather, what are you going to say? We're talking where there was one warning, and he makes these 4 or 5 bald spots. But me mechayiv, is he really chayiv on every single one if there was just one warning? But we learned in a Mishnah, Nazir shayashosa yayin kol hayom. If a Nazir is drinking wine all day, then he's only chayiv one. Amru lo al tishta. If they say don't drink, they issue different warnings. V'ushos, and he drinks, chayiv al kol achas v'achas, then he's chayiv on every single one. And so over here also, if there's only one warning, so then he should only be chayiv one. And if there's multiple warnings, so it should be obvious. And so the Gemara says, lo no tzrich, it's necessary to sach chamish etzbaos of nasha v'yozvinu b'bas achas, that he put on his 5 fingers, he put this ointment that removes the hair, and then he placed it on his head at one time. So even though it was one hasra, even though it was one warning, it's considered to be a hasra for every single one. Rashi explains, nasha perush sam shemeshes aseyor. That's a kind of medicine that removes the hair of hasach mimenu enot someach ser begufo. He uses that the hair doesn't grow. Ve'osvinu b'vasachas behemakomos, and at one time he puts it in 5 places. Tahavalu hey krichos v'chad hasra. It ends up being 5 bald spots with one warning. Dikevon the b'vasachas kav in my chazas the chayil hasra hayetzba tvei mehai. If he did it all at once, how do you know the warning went on this finger more than that finger? And Rashi continues, v'hasra asafik lo mechshav. It's not considered a hasra asafik. The hasra kulu etzbo shadya, because the warning goes on all the fingers. Uminchol alter misbar lam choshesh la'asra so imlo. And again, we're going to find out later whether he was concerned with the hasra or not. And the Gemara continues, V'kama shir karchana, how much is the amount that's considered a bald spot? Rav Huna Amar Kadesh Yirmei Rosh, or Rav Huna says it's in order that you can see the skin of his head. Rabbi Yochanan Omer Mishum Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yochanan says, in the name of Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Kegris, it's the amount of a gris, which is a kind of a bean. And the Gemara continues, and we'll use the girsa of the Bach, Ketanoi, it's a machlokas tanoim, Kama shir karcha, how much is the amount of a bald spot? Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer Kegris, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says it's the amount of a gris, again a kind of a bean. Acherim Omrim, others say, Kadesh Yirmei Rosh, again in order that you see the skin of his head. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva. Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva says, Pligi ba Tolosa Tanoi. There's actually a machlokas in this between 3 Tanoim. Chad Omer Kagris, one says the size of a gris. V'chad Omer Kadesh Yirmei Rosha, one says the size, again to see the skin on his head. V'chad Omer Kishtei Saros, and one says it's the amount of 2 hairs. V'ika demapik Shtei Saros, there are some who take out of this version the opinion that says 2 hairs, Uma'ayil b'chadosh, and instead they say that the amount is the amount of kadosha, which is the size of a lentil. V'simonech, and the way to remember this is Baheres Kegris U'michi Kadosha. By Tsaras we say that the Baheres, which is the white Tsaras, that's the shear of a gris, and the Michi, which is the flesh of Tsaras, that's Kadosha, that's the size of a lentil. And Rashi explains, V'simonech delotema mapik Kegris U'mayil Kadosha. Maybe you'll think we should take out the opinion that said gris and put in Kadosha, so don't say that. The way to remember not to say that is Mishnah Zu, Baheres Kegris U'michi Kadosha. That Mishnah mentions a gris and a Kadosha. The Hachanami b'shiurei karcha ika kegris v'chadasha. Here also, when it comes to the measurement of the bald spots, we do have gris and kadasha. And now we're going to know the only one to take out is the 2 hairs. To Yirmei Rosho, that shear that you have to be able to see the skin, lo havetzrichim lafuke, that we won't need to take out. To shavahu l'divrei kulam, everybody could agree to that. The ein zeh shir kotzev, that's not a set amount anyhow. And the Gemara continues, Tana was taught, Hanotel mole pi hazug b'Shabbos, if somebody cuts a scissor full of hair on Shabbos, chayiv, so he's chayiv for violating Shabbos. V'kama mole pi hazug, how much is this mole pi hazug? Amar Rav Yehuda shtayim, Rav Yehuda says, it means 2 hairs. But the Gemara continues, V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa lekarcha shtayim, that for the violation of making a bald spot, it's 2 hairs, and it sounds like only for that we say it's 2 hairs, but not for Shabbos. And the Gemara says, Ema, rather what the brisa really should say is v'chein lekarcha, and similarly for karcha shtayim, it's 2 hairs, and so then the idea would be that that's true on Shabbos as well. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa like this as well. Hanotel mole pi hazug b'Shabbos chayiv. Again, somebody takes a scissor full of hair on Shabbos, he's chayiv. V'kama mole pi hazug, and how much is that? Shtayim, it's 2 hairs. Rabbi Eliezer Omer achas. Rabbi Eliezer says it's 1 hair. Umodim chachamim l'Rabbi Eliezer, and the chachamim admit to Rabbi Eliezer, b'melaked levonos mitoch shechoros, if a person takes, let's say, the white hairs, he cuts those from among the black hairs, afilo achas shuchayiv, then even if he takes one hair, then even they agree that in that case the person would be chayiv. And not only that, says the Gemara, v'dover zeh, and this, afilo b'chol aser, to take the white hairs from the black hairs is aser even on a weekday, mishum shenemar, because it says in the pasuk, lo yilbash gever simlas isha, a man is not allowed to wear the garment of a woman, and the idea is with hair as well. That is something that a woman would do. And Rashi explains, af b'chol aser, even on a weekday, it's going to be aser shemisnoi atzma b'noi isha, because he's trying to beautify himself in the way that women would do that. And Rashi above it says, "B'malaket saros levanos mitoch shechoros." Let's say he's taking again the white ones from the dark ones. To kevan the adam makbet al sar lavan echad shebein saros of shechoros. Since a person cares about the fact that you have the white hair among the black ones, kedei shelo yerzak, and he doesn't want to look old. Amin de chashu malaket osami bein hashchoros. So there we say that when he's taking that from among the darker hairs, malacha chashuva hilo. That's a chashuv malacha in terms of Shabbos v'chayev mishum gozes, and he's liable because of the violation of gozes on Shabbos, of shearing on Shabbos, kevan dechayish l'gzizazu, since this was a shearing that he was concerned for. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'hamakif paas rosho v'chul," if somebody rounds the corners of his head. Tana Rabban, and the rabbis taught, paas rosho, when we say paas rosho, sof rosho, what we mean is the end of his head. Ve'ezo sof rosho, what does that mean, the end of his head? Zahamashvet tzedov lachorei oznov u'lepadachto. That's somebody who evens out the area of at the sides of his head with the area behind his ears and his forehead. Rashi explains, Hamashvet tzedov la'achorei ozno v'lapadachto. What that means is as follows: Achorei ozno means behind his ear, ein seir klum, there's no hair there. V'kach b'metzcho ein seir klum, also his forehead, there's no hair there. Avol bitzdov shebe'emtza, however, when it comes to his temples there in the middle, yesh seir, there is hair. V'im hu mashve v'notel kol haseir shebe'tzdov, so if he takes away all the hair of his temples, so l'midas achorei ozno padachto, and he takes that away according to where the area is behind his ear and the area of his forehead, he essentially rounds that out, evens that out. Zehu makif sofarosh. That is what it means to say when we say he rounds out the end of his head. We'll see the earlier Rashi as well. Ve'ezu sofarosho be'eze inyan yehi makif sofarosh sheichai beval takifu. How is it that a person rounds the end of his head that he's now liable for bal takifu? And again, it's if he evens out the hair in that manner. And the Gemara continues, Tani Tana Kami de Rav Chisda, the Tana taught before Rav Chisda. Again, this is an Amora who brings brises. Echad HaMakif v'Echad HaNikif, whether the person who's actually doing the rounding, the cutting of the hair, and the person whose hair is being cut, both of them, Loka, both of them are going to get Malkus. Amar Lei said to him, Mandochel Tamri Barbila, lucky somebody who's eating dates in a sieve, he should get Malkus. Rashi explains the question, Dochel Tamri Barbila ha'ochel tamarim b'kvari hey loka bitmiya. Person eats dates in a sieve, he should get malchus. Kilomar nikif ma posha shu loka lav shein bo ma'isa have, meaning the person who's getting the haircut. So what did he do wrong? It's a lav shein bo ma'isa, he's not doing any action. V'lo lilki, therefore he shouldn't get malchus for that. And the Gemara continues, Diyamar lachmani Rabbi Yehuda. So who is the one that says this? This is Rabbi Yehuda. Diyamar lav shein bo ma'isa lokan olive, who says that a lav shein bo ma'isa does get malchus. Rashi explains, Diyamar lachmani, meaning hashoa loch keman ko amrit nikaf loka, the one who's asking, according to whom is the nikaf getting malchus? Eimolei. If someone asks you that question, you know what you should say to him. Say to him Rabbi Yehuda. Tell him it's Rabbi Yehuda. Diyamar lei lav shein bo ma'isa lokan olive, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that a lav even without an action gets malchus. V'hainu lav shein bo ma'isa, and this is a lav shein bo ma'isa. The nikif hu cover a lav de lo sakifu, because the nikif is the one that's violating. To shaminan l'krahachi, we understand the pasuk as follows: lo sakifu, lo sanichu lahakif. Don't allow yourself to have your hair cut in this manner. Deminiach lahakif kamakif. Again, the idea is we're saying that that person who's getting his hair cut is like the person who's doing it. Inami midafke b'loshen rab. More Rashi says from the fact that it's in plural. Techsiv lo sakifu mashma da'atrei mizar. Sounds like it's warning both of them. Rachmana, the Torah is warning both of them. Nikif u'makif. It's warning the nikif and the makif. And so that's the first answer of the Gemara that we're following. Rabbi Yehuda says lav shein b'maisa gets malchus. Rava says a different answer. B'makif liatzma. We're talking about over here. You don't need to say it's Rabbi Yehuda. We could say that the person is cutting his own hair. V'divrei hakol, and then it would follow everybody. You don't need to say it's Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Ashi says b'mesayeh, that he's assisting the person who's giving him the haircut by moving his head around, gives him assistance. V'divrei hakol, and then again it could follow everyone because then he is in fact doing something. And Rashi explains, Rava Amar Lo Tzrich L'Ukmei Reb Yehuda. You don't need to say it's like Reb Yehuda, Hach Brisa, this Brisa, the Tani Tanakh made the Rav Chisda, the Kaima B'Makif Esatzmo, because we can say the Brisa is really talking about someone who cuts his own hair, V'Kamashmal, the Chayiv Tarti, and we're saying he's Chayiv for two violations. Misham Makif and Misham Nikif, he's Chayiv both from being a Makif and a Nikif. He's the one giving the haircut and he's the one receiving as well. V'Divrei Akol, the Lo Tzarech L'Trutzi Reb Yehudi, that would follow everyone. You don't need to say it's Reb Yehuda. And finally, Misayeya, you could also say that he's assisting the person giving the haircut. Mazmin Hasaros Lamakif, again, he's making it accessible for the person giving the haircut. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'amashchis pas zakano." If somebody destroys the corners of his beard, Tanu Rabban and the rabbis taught pas zakano, sof zakano. What does pas zakano mean? It means the end of his beard. Ve'ezeu sof zakano shiboles zakano. And what's considered the end of his beard? It's the shiboles of his beard. Rashi explains shiboles zakan. What does that mean? Kulu chamesh peyos. It means the five corners. To kachash v'masis, and it basically means the five corners that are mentioned in the Mishnah. Bechlal shiboles heim. That's all included in the word shiboles. And the literal translation of Shibolas Zakana would be the stalk of his beard. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, somebody who makes one cut. Tanu Rabban and the rabbis taught, Veseret, it says again, you make an incision. Yachol afilu sarat al beiso shenafal val sfinoso shetava bayam. I might think even if he cuts himself over grief because his house fell down, or because his ship, it sank at sea. Talmud lomar lo nefesh, it says specifically you're making these cuts because somebody died. Eino chayev el ala meis bilvad, you're only chayev if it's because of grief over a mace, over somebody who died. Uminayin lemisaret chomesh sritos al Mesechet shuchayv al kolachas v'yachas. From where do we know that if he makes 5 cuts for one mace, that he's chayev on every single one? Talmud lomar v'seret, the pasuk says v'seret l'chayv al kol srito, in order to be mechayev on every single cut. Rabbi Yossi says, "Minayin l'misaret srito achas al heimesim shuchayev al kolachas v'yachas." From where do we know that if he makes 5 cuts on that if he makes 1 cut rather on 5 mesim, that he's chayev on every single one? Talmud lomar lenefesh, it says lenefesh l'chayev al kol nefesh v'nefesh, to be mechayev the person on every single mace. But the Gemara continues, but this word lanefesh, we already used it. We just used it above to say that it specifically has to be for a mace, and it shouldn't be just if his house falls down or if his ship sinks at sea. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph.